If you've ever found yourself drawn to a puzzle, not just because it looked fun, but because the image meant something to you, this is the podcast for you. Hey, I'm Lucy and welcome to Dissectologists. Today I'm talking with Joyce Yoo, a competitive puzzler, creative freelancer, and collector whose puzzle shelves tell a story of their own. Joyce is known in the puzzle community for speed puzzling to her own brand, Puzzworthy, but something that really caught my attention is her collections. So thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Lucy. Glad to be here with you.
Well, I'd love to start with your relationship to puzzles growing up. Were they always part of your life?
I think, yeah, from a young age, I was doing puzzles, anything that was kind of indoor solitary. And then I think as I grew up, I didn't necessarily do puzzles a whole bunch. It was probably around 2022 when I got back into it really heavily, and I kind of haven't looked back. So around the time my health was declining, and so I stopped being able to do a lot of the things that I love to do, like rock climb, like long hikes. And I found that puzzles were something that I could just spend my time with. It would take my mind off things that I could still do and that I could enjoy. And my husband and I had moved to a different part of town, so our local library was different, and that library rented puzzles. And so that's really what got me started down the rabbit hole.
What role do puzzles play in your life now? Are they competition, collecting, relaxation, something else entirely?
I'd say mostly relaxation. Doing puzzles is probably one of the very rare times where my very busy, very loud mind actually quiets down and I kind of forget about a lot of things and just really get into that flow state. And then I think the other thing is it's become a creative outlet for me. Making content, making videos, things like that. It's always fun to come up with different ideas, and puzzles, because there's so many moving parts, there's so much that you can do with it.
I mean, do you almost look at some of the work you're doing now with your Instagram page as mini documentary?
That's actually probably a good way to think about it. So yeah, my husband and I both have a background in indie filmmaking, and I think when I look back on all of my interests in my career, I think storytelling is really what drives me. And when I was a kid, the first thing that I wanted to be when I grew up was an actor. Well, at the time, there was hardly any Asian representation on camera, and so it was hard to see myself in that world. And then now with different health challenges, I can't do, 16-hour days on a set. And so in a way, these short form content that I can create on my own, do on my own schedule, has been an outlet for me for sure.
Oh, I love to hear that you kind of found another avenue to still do the things that make your heart sing, because, it stinks when something kind of gets in the way of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's start with Alice in Wonderland. What drew you to collecting puzzles from that world specifically?
So I always have loved Alice in Wonderland. I think the weirdness and kookiness of it, and I kind of use that phrase a lot, falling down the rabbit hole, because that feels like a very typical part of my day and how I move through the world is I get sucked into something and I'm in my own little world that no one else knows about. And it's a little bit weird and out there, but it makes sense to me. So I always loved that story. And it's something that is widely known enough that a lot of people have done their own iterations. So there's so many interpretations of Alice. And I think what got me really thinking about collecting is I actually stumbled across a Korean version of Alice in Wonderland. So done up in kind of the traditional Korean outfits with some of the iconic Korean kind of elements and things like that. And then I started wanting to collect more Alice and more Korean puzzles.
Do you see any connection between the logic puzzles in Alice's world and the act of you being drawn to puzzling itself?
In a way, I think I've always been drawn to solving things and working out puzzles and just kind of adventuring and wandering. I've always had really bizarre, vivid dreams. And so honestly, Alice's world felt familiar to me. It didn't feel odd. And so I do think that has been a big part of my inner world. And then solving things. I've always loved crossword puzzles. I like escape rooms, riddles, brain teasers, you name it. I'm into solving things for sure.
I also collect Alice puzzles, but like, I mean, on accident. I have like 5 of them. It's like nothing major. But it does fascinate me how many people are actually drawn to this story. Like, in your opinion, why do you think that is?
I have kind of a working theory, right? Having interacted with and met a lot of people in the puzzle world, I think a lot of us, myself included, are neurodivergent. And I think Alice sort of taps into that a bit. It's a little bit odd, it's a bit out of place. And funny enough, although she encounters a lot of people along the way, she's on her own. And I think that's what it feels like to move through the world being neurodivergent is you're just this person trying to figure out this really strange, odd, incomprehensible world on your own.
I love you looking at it through that lens. It actually makes a whole lot of sense when you explain it that way. Do you have a favorite Alice puzzle in your collection?
Oh, that's so hard to pick.
The other ones are going to get jealous.
I know. I do have this wooden one. It's by the brand Davichi, which is a Russian brand, and it is a laser cut wooden puzzle. And just the way it's cut is so intricate because there's a lot of cool whimsies, which are those shaped pieces. So it's a piece that looks like a heart or like the white rabbit or whatever. But then in the middle of it is also multiple pieces connect together to form this big kind of gnarled tree. So it's sort of this, I call it a mega whimsy kind of put together. So it's just the design of it is so interesting and clever and very on theme. It just kind of adds to the storytelling of the puzzle.
Yeah. Oh, I love the bigger puzzle within the puzzle. That is intriguing for sure. So you collect puzzles in a very intentional way, it sounds like. Do you think the things that we collect become like little reflections of who we are?
Probably to some degree, right? There's a reason that we're drawn to those things and want more of those things. I think, yeah, because I love that story so much and I love the little characters and the different ways that people see characters. I've always been fascinated by that, right? How different people come with such different perspectives and interpretations to the same thing. And where do you bridge the gap and where do you have things in common? I think that's always really interesting. But part of it, too, is also cultivating and kind of allowing for the things that I like and enjoy, because I think a lot of my life I put that aside and didn't allow myself a lot of things. So I'm sort of in my me era, if you will, where I am trying to embrace and enjoy and encourage the things that I like. And part of my collection for me too is that it's a reminder for me about the thoughtfulness and generosity and kindness of the puzzle community that I've come to know. A few of those puzzles are gifts from them. I'm not used to being in a community that is that sort of proactively looking out for each other and trying to give each other little spots of joy. So that has become kind of an added layer of meaningfulness from my collection.
Do you see collecting as different from puzzling?
Yes.
Okay.
For sure. And I think there's a lot of like conversation and jokes in the puzzle community about how like buying or acquiring puzzles is a totally separate hobby from doing puzzles.
It makes sense though.
Yeah. They probably touch on different things. I mean, the collecting or acquiring a puzzle is that kind of exciting hit of like, oh my gosh, and it's new and it's novel. Whereas I think building a puzzle is a lot more just being present in the experience. I mean, granted, collecting puzzles leads to the puzzling because I'm very picky about the art. For me, a big part of puzzling is the art, and I get really boosted by looking at beautiful art and art that I love for a long time. So definitely they go hand in hand, but they do feel like separate hobbies.
Okay, so you mentioned the artwork. Let's kind of dig back into that, into your collection again, because you also collect Korean puzzles. I find that very interesting. How did that part of your collection begin?
Well, so I am Korean. That's my heritage. My parents immigrated from South Korea, and in the late 70s, my brothers and I were all born in the United States in the 80s. And growing up around that time, it was kind of hard to be proud of our heritage. You know, we got made fun of. We were very othered. We didn't see a lot of representation. So I think I struggled with my identity a lot growing up. And especially, again, as I've become older and have started kind of reclaiming myself and who I am and my identity, I have wanted to kind of bring that cultural side of things to the forefront. And it's only been very recently that Korea's kind of blown up on the pop culture stage, right? So it's been sort of a really strange phenomenon. But yeah, I wanted to collect them because I wanted to be more in touch with my heritage. And it's something I think that is a little bit more of a connection for myself and my parents because they will visit Korea often. They're there now for a while. They're actually thinking of moving back now that they're retired. And so when they go visit, I'll ask them to bring me back some puzzles. And that's just a little bit of a way that we can connect a little bit more.
Because of that, have you discovered artwork or like puzzle brands that you may not have encountered otherwise?
Oh, for sure. Korea has its own brands coming out of there. There is an artist in particular that was easier to find because actually some of the puzzles that she does art for were available through American retailers in a limited sense. But her name is Oo Na-young, and she does a lot of sort of Koreanized versions of, say, Disney characters or popular children's characters. And so I came
Cool.
across her. So I have a version of hers that's Cinderella. I have a version that is The Little Mermaid, Little Women, and different sort of classic stories that she has put her own spin on, where it's Korean faces, it's Korean dress and artifacts and things like that.
Do puzzles to you ever feel like cultural artifacts, like pieces of visual culture traveling across generations?
Oh, for sure. There's so much history to puzzles, and I'm also pretty into vintage puzzles. And oftentimes those boxes have things on the back, like little stories, poems, things like that. And I love those. Those are some of my favorite parts of those puzzles because it kind of is a little snapshot in time of the way that people spoke or the things that they found interesting or wanted to talk about at the time, even kind of what was the sense of humor, because some puzzles are kind of funny and a little quirky. So, yeah, that's always so interesting to me. And there's been different stages with puzzles. During the Great Depression, jigsaw puzzles blew up because they were relatively cheap and it's something that people could do to pass the time. And then again, around COVID, puzzles blew up, right? Because people are stuck at home, they need
Yeah.
something to do. And I think around that time, I would say, is when I would call this sort of like an artistic revolution in the puzzle space, because up until that point, puzzles were like traditional, boring images. But
Agreed.
I think, yeah, around COVID, because so many people were puzzling and they were like, oh, these are boring. I wish there were better puzzles. And so a bunch of people started creating their own puzzle brands with art that kind of spoke more to their aesthetic. So puzzles are definitely an artifact or reminders about history and culture.
I feel like, yeah, if somebody does like someday look visually like this giant explosion of color just happened around this time period, you know?
Yeah.
And I love that we're a part of that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
You do have a very playful personality online. That's how you come across. Do you think puzzlers are drawn to certain kinds of humor?
Maybe so. And again, I think it speaks to a lot of us being neurodivergent. I do try to put things out there that are joyful and fun. That is very much an intention and something I do purposely because I just think the world needs more of that, you know? I don't feel like I am a naturally joyful person, and that may seem weird to say, but I even talked to a friend once and I just said, I think I'm just a sad person. And she understood what I meant because I think she felt the same way. But I've dealt with a lot of depression and anxiety and things like that. And so, in a way, I think because joy didn't necessarily come naturally to me, that it was something that I've always had to cultivate intentionally and seek out. And so, I think that that is why I am intentional with that because again, it's about what are you putting out into the world? And I think a lot of people can be very careless and thoughtless about that and just throw things out there and it can be very harmful, it can be
Yeah.
very hurtful. And I really try to think about what it is that I choose to put out into the world.
I really love that. And relates so much to what you just said. It does feel like a good portion of people I meet who like their public persona is very like outgoing and social and all of these things. And you're like on, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. But then when you close the door, that's when like you get, I don't know, like if you feel this way ever, but like, and this is kind of personal stuff, but like you just said something I connected to so much because I also suffer with depression. And like I used to do radio and you were on all the time. And people would just be like, oh, this is the kind of person you are. But what they didn't know is I went home and just crashed, like,
Yeah.
and in my personal time, like I just wanted to be home alone because I was like, I'm exhausted from just having to turn that on all day.
Yeah.
So it is interesting how you kind of described that peaks and valleys sort of symptom of that.
But you're right. I think, you look at people like Robin Williams or a lot of comedians, actually, a lot of comedians, right,
Yeah,
have mental health issues and challenges. And I think part of it is how attuned maybe we have to be or are to other people and their feelings. And maybe at some point in our lives, we were expected to or required to contort ourselves for other people's comfort. And so
yeah,
that became a skill or a survival tactic. And so I think the combination of like reading people and the habit of accommodating other people or making other people feel better sort of lends itself to entertaining or, being fun or putting on a joyful face or whatever. But I think that, yes, you're right. It is so exhausting and draining. And yeah, when we come home, we kind of crash or it's hard times. And not necessarily that I feel like doing that stuff is fake. Like I like doing that stuff, but it does take a lot out. And
agreed.
it's hard sometimes because on the one hand, you want people to know, right? Like you want to be seen, but at the same time, you're afraid to be seen. So it's this weird paradox.
It sounds like, I mean, like we probably grew up in the same era, but like mental health was very stigmatized. Like now finally people are talking about it, but it's still stigmatized a little bit. Like still people are still kind of coming around, but people are talking about it now, which is so much better. But
Right.
it's probably why puzzling is something like many people like us are drawn to, because
Mm-hmm.
it is that quiet meditative space.
Yeah. Puzzle's not going to judge you. It's not going to give you a weird look.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. What is the difference between a puzzle you solve and a puzzle you keep?
I think a puzzle you solve is a much larger pool, and I'm okay with occasionally pushing through. Sometimes I like a challenge, and I like to just see if I can push myself and get to the end. But when I'm done with that, sometimes it's like, oh, I never want to do this again because it was tedious or it was boring, right? I'm glad I did it, but I don't want to do it again. And so I think a puzzle I keep has to be something that I felt really good doing it in the moment. Like I could feel that I was present and something that I think, oh, I'd want to do that again. So part of that is the art, part of that is the experience, because I've been surprised by puzzles too, right? Where I cracked it open and I thought, this will be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned out to love it. And so sometimes that surprise is what makes me keep it. And some of it is the collections, right? I'm a little bit more open to the puzzles that I'll take in for that say is an Alice puzzle, even if I think it's creepy or it's going to be hard because it's an Alice. I just like having the range of Alice art and Alice iterations.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that's probably the big difference in that the ones that I keep are ones that I intend to do again or are just part of a specific collection.
When you look at your puzzle collection, what do you think it says about you?
I think probably that I like bright and colorful. I think instantly you'll see that in my collection because those are really the puzzles that I'm drawn to. I think eclectic too. I think I have pretty eclectic taste. Probably whoa, because it's a lot. I have like over 300 puzzles. I actually keep a spreadsheet of all of them. so I know how many I have.
That is so organized. Are you kidding me?
I love a spreadsheet. It's so nerdy, but I love a spreadsheet. Can I tell you a spreadsheet story? Okay, so back in my probably like late 20s, I was in grad school and met a really good friend through there. And we were out to dinner somewhere and we were just like sitting, chatting. And I'm not actually a big chatter. Usually I'm not that talkative in social interactions. But that night I was just chattering her ear off. Like, I don't think she got a word in edgewise. And it's because earlier that day, I had learned how to do pivot tables in Microsoft Excel, and I just like could not shut up about it. So
that is an exciting pivot to make. Not to use the word again, but yes.
yeah.
Okay. I end every interview with the same 3 puzzle questions. Question 1, what is your favorite puzzle size by piece count?
1,000. I think that's, to me, the sweet spot of being challenging enough, but that I can finish in a relatively quick enough time that it feels satisfying. And just more bang for your buck, you know?
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. Same. However, can I say I am leaning into 500 750s.
Listen, 750 is the unsung piece count. Please make more 750 piece puzzle makers. And honestly, it's so neglected, but I think it's such a good sweet spot piece count.
You are finishing a puzzle and you realize one piece is missing. What do you do?
I look for it everywhere. I check the box, I check the bag, I check the floor. And in some cases, I haven't been able to do this as much lately just because of time, but I used to make a replacement piece for the missing piece. Yeah.
What?
So I picked up a few tricks and tips from other people, and then I sort of added my own spin. But basically, you can take like a cereal box, because it's thin cardboard, and put it under the space where the piece is missing and trace a few layers and then cut it out and glue them together. And then for the image, you can do a bunch of things. Like you can paint, you can draw. I tend to use a printer, so I'll scan the box, or if it comes with the poster, and then I will sort of scan the section with the missing piece and match them up together and print it, cut it out, glue it on top, and then put kind of a protective layer over it. I do have a tutorial like pinned to my Instagram feed, my reels, if anyone wants the tutorial.
And it's relatively stuff that's probably at the house. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Okay. You open a new puzzle and some pieces are stuck together. Do you leave them assembled or do you pull them apart and mix them in?
I feel like this is such a this is like the hot topic in the puzzle community. I feel like I talk to people about this so much. I take it apart. I feel like that's part of the process and I want the whole process. That said, lately, or if I'm especially busy, sometimes I'll just take the head start.
I'm excited that you said you pull them apart because let me tell you, so many people give me the other answer and I am a pull-aparter.
Sure.
Can you call it that?
We're making up terms in the puzzle world like every day. Why not?
Oh, well, this has been so fun. Joyce, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I've really enjoyed this.
Oh, thank you. This has been great. I appreciate your time.
And to everyone listening, however you puzzle, however you solve, you're doing it the right way.